Welcome, Estela. Welcome, Marceli. We're so glad to have you here. And good evening, everyone. With that, it's been a few seconds, and so would love to get this meeting started. So good evening. Welcome, everyone, to our 68th South Fresno Community Steering Committee meeting. My name is Bikela, and I'm joined here tonight by my two wonderful co-facilitators, Liz and Amy. And so before we officially begin our meeting for welcome and introductions, would love to just let us take a few minutes to walk through our usual housekeeping slides. And so at this time, Tanya, would you like to go over the instructions for translation, both in Spanish and English, for our CSC this evening?
Yes, thank you very much. Buenas tardes a todos, bienvenidos nuevamente a su reunión. Les recordamos que como siempre tenemos la interpretación simultánea ya disponible para ustedes y les voy a dar instrucciones si aún no saben cómo ingresar. Si ingresaron utilizando una computadora van a ver el icono de un mundo en la parte de abajo de su menú de Zoom. Seleccionen ese icono y seleccionen el canal de español. También pueden silenciar el audio original para que nada más escuchen al intérprete. Si ustedes ingresaron utilizando un teléfono móvil o una tableta, sus opciones van a ser un poco diferentes. Necesitan tocar su pantalla y van a buscar el menú de los tres puntitos, ya sea en la parte de arriba o de abajo de su pantalla. Seleccionen donde dice interpretación de idioma. Después seleccionen español. Nuevamente silenciar el audio original y por último el botón que diga listo, done o finalizado. Si necesitan ayuda nos pueden dejar saber en el chat. Y ahora voy a dar mis mismas instrucciones pero en inglés. Hello everyone, and this is just a reminder that as always, we have Spanish interpretation available for this meeting. So if you're a monolingual English speaker and you need interpretation from Spanish into English and you're joining with a computer, you will see a globe at the bottom of your Zoom menu. Please select the globe and select English. If you're joining with a cell phone or a tablet, your options would be a bit different. You need to tap your screen and find the menu with the three dots, either on top or at the bottom of your screen. Select language interpretation, select English, and then select done. If you need any help, please let us know in the chat. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Tanya. This is Bikela. So let's just pause really quick to make sure everyone's interpretation is working. How are we doing? Can everyone hear me? Tanya, Linguistica team, any concerns, or is everyone able to hear me? Okay, I see a thumbs up. Wonderful. Well, yes. So with that, thank you so much. So tonight, as per usual, our team will be working behind the scenes to take attendance, to offer technical assistance and general support to ensure that everyone is able to engage fully in tonight's meeting as much as is possible. If at any point you're having trouble with Zoom or the translation or have any questions about anything else, please feel free to message any one of us or post in the Zoom chat and we'd be happy to help. And as a brief reminder, before we continue through our typical housekeeping slides, we do want to encourage everyone to try to remember to state your name and speak at a slightly slower pace so our interpreters and those who are joining via phone can know who's speaking. Stating our name before speaking is just an important part of making sure that this meeting is as accessible as possible to all attendees. And so I know I personally still need reminders from time to time. And so our Harder & Company facilitation team will try to be really intentional to remind folks throughout the meeting as well. And so speaking of translation, really quick, before we move on, I would just like to take a moment to shout out the incredible Linguistica team for your faithful commitment and critical role in making this meeting as accessible as can be every single month. It's amazing. And so, yes, if you just have a moment, please feel free to join me in thanking Linguistica either in the chat or with a reaction, just to share our appreciation for their translation support every month for the CSC. So thank you. With that, moving on, both as we get started, yes, please make sure that your screen name reflects this naming convention. If you're a CSC member or a resident, if you're a CSC member, please put CSC in front of your name. If a resident, an R in front of your name. And this is an important reminder for us as it helps us track attendance, especially for those participating in the stipend program. For all other participants, please use this naming convention with your first and last name, followed by your organization or agency. And then just a few brief reminders for the virtual setting. Please make sure your microphone is on mute unless you are speaking or planning to speak. If you're calling in by phone, you will need to press *6. If you have a question or a comment, please raise your hand on Zoom. And if you're calling by phone, you will need to press *9 for that feature. As a reminder, to residents participating in the stipend program, you would need to stay for at least 75% of the meeting. So for our meeting time officially starting at 5:30, you would need to stay until at least 7:00 p.m. to be eligible for a stipend. And as a brief reminder, all of this is in the CSC Community Steering Committee. All of us in this space continue to commit to these group agreements, such as seeking common ground, focusing on solutions and opportunities and productive dialogue, and respectfully challenging ideas and outcomes over individuals as we seek that common ground, as we all together work towards the ongoing implementation of AB 617 to combat disproportionate air pollution burden in South Central Fresno. So thank you, each of you, for your commitment to continue to engage by these community agreements each month so we can maximize our always too short time together in this space. So with that, for tonight's meeting, we have the following items on the agenda: our welcome that we're going through right now, welcome. And then followed by our next up, our action item tracker follow-up, our truck reroute study update, air monitoring update, and then the typical standing updates, next steps, and agenda setting, and final public comment. So thank you for your attention as we went through those items. I invite Ryan from the Air District to provide us with any opening remarks you would like to share with us, Ryan.
Thanks, Michaela. Thanks everyone for being here tonight. Really appreciate your attendance, and looking forward to the discussion and the conversation. Really want to thank the city for being here tonight. I know there were some questions and concerns over the truck reroute study and when that was going to be taken to be presented to the city council, and some of the adjustments that have been made, and their willingness to come tonight and to share information on the final version of the truck reroute study, and then also to answer the committee's questions. Just kind of as we're winding down not only this year, but entering, finishing up the 5th year of implementation of the community emission reduction program for South Central Fresno. Over these next several months, we're really going to be trying to focus on a lot of different ways to fully implement the specific measures that are a part of that community emissions reduction program. All of you have done a tremendous amount of work to get us where we are today. We still have a lot of work to be done. And so we just kind of want to work with you on over these next several months to kind of help further develop that roadmap for fully implementing the South Central Community Emissions Reduction Program. And so at this point, I'll turn it back over to you, Michaela. Thanks.
Thank you, Ryan. This is Michaela. So with that, it is now time to transition to our action item tracker follow-up. So to help, as always, to help facilitate transparency and accountability for our team and the AD team, we continuously and systematically update this action item tracker to ensure that all of the requests that emerge in this space are documented and you stay informed about the progress towards implementation of your suggestions. As a reminder, at the end of our meeting, in each meeting, we share action items and encourage you to please know any action items that should be tracked or added to. And as Nancy provides updates for tonight, please feel free to ask for clarification. Any items that need follow-up will be noted and then addressed at future meetings. Thank you. Take it away, Nancy.
This is Nancy. Thank you so much, Michaela. And so these action items are a routine check-in on some of the action items that have come out of previous meetings, particularly focused on the previous so we're just going to be focusing on the previous meetings, and more specifically from August. And so I went ahead and shared the action items. If you want to follow along, they can be found in the comment section. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
I see thumbs up and nods. Thank you. All right, and then so we had 2 action items from the previous CSC meeting back in August. And so I will go ahead and just start with that. Each action item is categorized into these 4 different categories. And so for today, we will be going over the in progress one. And so this action item, which is 67.1, is related to school bus routes. So which school buses will be delivered to, or which routes will be for the school buses. And so Fresno Unified will be receiving 6 electric school buses in June 2025. Once these buses have been delivered in June 2025, Fresno Unified will be able to determine which schools will be receiving these buses, as well as determine bus routes. So Fresno Unified's intentions are that all buses will serve schools in the South Central Fresno boundary. So please rest assured that we have been working with Fresno Unified to emphasize the importance of buses operating in the boundary, and we'll continue to keep in touch with them and provide you all with an update in spring of 2025. And so that concludes the in progress. The next action item will be in the completed section. And this is action item 67.2. And this is regarding the city of Fresno, and they were to share the agenda for August 29 meeting when the city was supposed to take their truck study to their city council. And so we did go ahead and share this information via email. However, this has been postponed. And so we do have the city of Fresno representatives here tonight. So if you have any questions, please ask them today, and they will be more than happy to answer any questions that you have. And so that concludes the action items, the 2 action items that we had for today. I'm happy to take any questions, or please feel free to add them in the chat, and we can be able to, or we will be able to answer these questions for you all.
Thank you for providing these updates, these important updates for us, Nancy. Yeah, with that, would love to open up the floor, as Nancy mentioned. Any questions coming up for folks, please feel free to utilize the chat as mentioned, or the raise hand feature, if so.
This is Nancy again, and I just want to emphasize that please use the chat if needed. Oh, I see a question.
Yeah, yes. Please go ahead, Lisa.
Hi, imagine my shock and surprise when I learned that the truck reroute study was finished, when I've been asking for, oh goodness, God knows how long, to get a copy of it from the city, and I've yet to see a copy from it. So I'm really surprised they're even doing a workshop, and I was even more surprised it was on the agenda the last city council meeting. So my question would be to the city is, who do I have to know to actually get a copy of the truck reroute study, especially since I requested one from the director of planning and still haven't got it? And how do I get it in large print without them saying that they're not going to print something for me because it's going to cost too much in staff time and staff dollars? How do they make it accessible to those of us with sight disabilities? Thank you. And what is their public outreach, or what has been? That's all I got to ask. Thank you.
Hi, Lisa. This is Amy Ramos. Those are great questions, and we made a note of them. And I propose that when we get to the truck reroute study on the agenda, that the city be ready to answer those questions.
Hi, this is Michaela. Yes, thank you, Lisa, for that question. We look forward to continuing the conversation during that item coming up really soon here. Yes, any other questions coming up for anyone around the action action item tracker follow-up for the evening. I see the comment in the chat from you, Lilia. Good afternoon. Thank you for your update, Nancy. The school trucks are very important. Thank you for your comment, Lilia. Well, with that, definitely want to jump into this next agenda item. And so I don't see any other questions in the chat or any other hand raised features indicated, but please know if any of you do have questions, please feel free to use these features to ask questions. So with that, thank you. So this now brings us to the truck reroute study update agenda item. And so this will be an update with Scott Mosier, Andrina Aguilar, and Jill Gormley with the City of Fresno. And as a refresher, particularly given the variability and the amount of time each CSC member tonight may or may not have been involved in this work or present at different meetings, this truck reroute study item has been one of the first prioritized CERT measures prioritized by this South Central Fresno CSC, one which has involved a lot of work and a lot of effort. We perceive and want to honor your efforts to prioritize this measure these past 4 years, to get it approved by CARB, and to navigate the long on-ramp to implement and conclude a long scientific study like this, which has involved so many agency partners and data collection. And on a practical note, as many of you know, the council agenda item ID 241109 related to the South Central Fresno AB 617 Community Truck Reroute Study and Health Impact Assessment was previously set to be proposed by consultants Arcadis and UCM, as well as city staff in August. Yet this has now been postponed and is now set to be presented before the council on September 26th, so later this month. So with all of this said, as we listen to updates around the truck reroute study tonight from Scott, Andrina, and Jill with the City of Fresno, we invite you to continue to lean into this nuanced, layered conversation, continuing to ask the questions which are coming up for you in your heart and mind, and to continue showing up for the South Central Fresno community as you are able and willing. So with that, City of Fresno, take it away.
Good evening, everybody. Andrina Aguilar with the City of Fresno Public Works Department. I am the project manager on this project. Will I be sharing the slideshow or will somebody from...
If you would be willing to share, that would be great. But if you prefer one of us to share, we'd be happy to.
Let me get it pulled up.
Thank you, Andrina, and thank you everyone for your patience.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so Andrina with City of Fresno. I am the project manager, and I've been involved from very, very early on, as early on as putting together the RFP that went out for advertisement. So today we're here for the South Central Fresno AB 617 Community Truck Reroute Study and Fresno Community Environmental Health Impact Assessment. We had 2 consultants on the team. Arcadis did the truck reroute study and UC Merced worked on the health impact assessment. The to give a little bit of background for anybody who was new or hasn't been involved since the very beginning. The project consisted of two components. These two components were prioritized by CSC members and let us know how important they were, that they were both connected to one another. The two components are the health impact assessment and the truck reroute study. The health impact assessment consisted of two parts. One was a population-based assessment where they gathered data and information publicly available or upon request by UC Merced. The second portion of that was the community-based health assessment. That's where they went out to the community to collect surveys. They ended up collecting 1,766 surveys, which then those, based on the analysis of the data and the findings that they had from the health survey, they came up with recommendations. Those recommendations then spoke to and informed the truck reroute study to evaluate on their evaluation of the truck reroute network. The truck reroute study consisted of multiple components. So early on in putting the RFP together, one of the recommendations, which I thought was a really good recommendation from the CSC, was to break up this huge study. So potentially this could have been this huge document that would have been difficult for the community to maybe understand at that point. So the recommendation was to break it up into components. Think of these components as milestones that we took through the process of the project, where the CSC was involved, the Air District, the community members, all their outreach. Each component had its own outreach effort. These components are listed on the slide in front of you. We had the outreach and engagement plan. That was the very first step. Lay out how the outreach is going to be done, who's going to be involved, stakeholders. We then had the existing conditions report, the best practices report, and the truck rerouting and implementation strategies report. Each component had input were reviewed and received comments from CSC, their Air District, the community. Some of these comments came in through meetings, through commenting periods, surveys that were done throughout the process. All of that was collected, put into these separate components. Then these separate components kind of came together and were put together at the very end for a truck reroute study. So recently, as was just expressed, we had planned to go to City Council to present both of the study and the health impact assessment in August. Some questions and concerns were raised, so it was postponed. One of the biggest things was what has changed, right? What has changed from what was seen in May to what was being proposed to the City Council. So I'd like to start off with visually, it does look like a different document, but the components of it are the same. So everything that has been shared since 2022, it's primarily the same. It's just all tied together into one larger document, which is our reroute study. On the next couple of slides, I'll go into detail on the minor changes that were made. So we have added an executive summary. with the health impact study, one of the recommendations that or comments that were received was to provide a executive summary to summarize the health impact assessment. Well, we thought it was going to be a really good idea to also add something like that to the truck reroute study, summarize the entire plan into a couple of pages that somebody can read and understand, and then go into more detail if they wish to in the document. So the executive summary is one of those things that was added from what you saw in May to what is now being presented to City Council. And this is just a snapshot of the start of it. The executive summary, I believe, consists of about 2 pages long. But it was easier to just snip this portion here. Okay, the second change is the Fresno Municipal Code and California Vehicle Code references. We had references within the document itself when we presented on the draft truck routing and implementation strategies report, but we thought we'd add more references to these sections in the study as a whole. So we added the language into the existing conditions portion or section of the study itself. The third change was renaming the previously named truck regulated areas to truck bypass restriction zones. The description of these areas is the same. The naming, we thought, caused some confusion, and we noticed that at the May meetings. During the May meetings, the concern was, well, how is this going to be regulated? And during the meetings, we tried our best to explain that these areas were focused on providing restrictions for trucks using neighborhoods as bypass routes. So we figured, okay, maybe we rename it in a way that really describes what these zones are, which are truck bypass restriction zones. We're removing the ability for a truck to use the neighborhoods as a bypass option, or a cut through, or a fast track option. Move the trucks from the residential areas where there's sensitive receptors. The fourth change is that we added a table listing the truck routes that we are proposing to be removed and added. This reflects the proposed map itself. We understand that it was difficult to see the map, and we figured, okay, well, how about one can clearly see the street segments that are being removed and those new reroutes that are needed to complete the network itself. So this was added in to provide ease of understanding of the map itself. So as I mentioned, the map the proposed map of truck routes was difficult to see, and we heard that in a couple of concerns and comments from our May meetings. So we worked with the consultant and asked them to break up the map so that it was easier for everyone to be able to see. So we went from one map that you see, or one figure, which is figure 4. We enhanced it on figure 5.8, and then further broke it up into quadrants. So it was easier for viewing and being able to zoom in and look at where some of these roadways were in respect to the properties. Okay. The last change is compiling the complete study. So we took all the milestones that were broken up, or those components, and we put them together, which now are the South Central Fresno AB 617 Community Truck Reroute Study. It was a good idea to break it up into portions that were more manageable for staff, for the consultant, for the CSC, for the subcommittee, for the public. That way people can look at one component, really focus on it, provide feedback, and then at the end, we took all of the different components, put them together, and we have what is the truck reroute study. Now, moving forward, to give you an idea, tomorrow, September 12th, we have a city council workshop. We will be essentially going through the project process. So giving the council some background on what AB 617 is, when it started, when conversations began with reference to rerouting trucks in the Southwest Pacific Plan, on up to drafting of the RFP, the involvement of everybody, community outreach that was performed through the process. So it's an overview of the project, of the background that led up to a project, to now presenting to the city council on a truck reroute study, the health impact assessment, and we do have an ordinance that we would be introducing, not at this meeting, but at a future meeting. So on the 12th, tomorrow, is a workshop providing overview to city council, and then at a later date, which we are tentatively scheduled for the 26th of this month, to present for an action from the council. If the ordinance is adopted, it goes into effect 30 days after its adoption. In the meantime, we would update our public-facing designated truck route list, and start communicating with the community and the businesses in their area to have them either update their own systems so that they're aware of the new truck routes, to try to have this as easy as a transition as possible. We understand that it's probably going to be a couple of hiccups. There's going to be a learning curve. It's not going to be overnight, but do all we can to inform everybody of new possible routes coming into play. The other thing I want to touch up on is any community concerns with roads being used as bypass roads for trucks, or if they're noticing, if the community is noticing that there's a specific business using a road as a truck route when it's not a truck route, those concerns can go into Fresno. The city of Fresno Public Works team would then evaluate those concerns and take action on those moving forward. And then last, our project website. We have our project website up. I do plan on getting the both documents that will be presented to city council up on there, if someone doesn't have them and needs them. Okay, and before I open it up for questions from anyone, I do want to address Lisa Flores' comment. I haven't received a request. I looked in our email, but Lisa, if you could send an email with your request to AB617 truck reroute study at fresno.gov. If you could please send it there.
Could you do me a favor? I don't really email because, you know, I'm visually impaired. About this, both at City Council, and I have been asking by various people in power for a copy of this. So I don't know what the problem is with me getting a copy of it. I mean, it's not that hard.
Who can I?
And Jennifer has my address, my new address.
Okay. That was my next question. Who can I speak to have your address to know where to send it to?
City Clerk, Miguel Arias, Annalise, everybody knows where I live now.
Okay, so then it sounds like the action item is under it that for you to connect with one of these folks to make sure that there's a large print copy that's sent to Lisa Flores's address manually, is what I'm hearing. Does that sound?
Yeah, is that my bigger question on that? The request is not going to be denied at the last minute, like my request for a copy of the agenda that happened at the last cycle of City Council. They literally called me at 4:45 before the meeting the next day. And also too, will the City Council open comments on this document via Zoom, because I physically cannot get down to City Hall because I do have physical limitations of me walking into City Hall.
Thank you, Lisa.
And I'm sure there's other community members that would like to participate and comment via Zoom as well. I mean, considering Fresno is so welcoming to public comments and all.
Thank you, Lisa. I'll connect with city clerks on your information. And as far as your second question, it's going to be up to the council president on how they want to perform tomorrow's meeting.
So that would be a no unless I'm a developer. So thank you.
Thank you, Andrina. And thank you, Lisa, for asking these questions. And yes, looking forward to the actions that will emerge from that space, from this space. And Ivanka, I do see your hand is raised. But I see that there was a question posed in the chat by you, Lilia. Do you have a schedule for tomorrow's presentation? And this is Bikela, by the way. Andrina, would you be able to speak to that?
The question came from Lilia, right? Thank you, Lilia, for your question. As far as an agenda, the agenda is posted for tomorrow's City Council meeting through Granicus.
Hi, this is Bikela. Thank you, Andrina. Would it be possible for one of the folks from the city of Fresno to drop the link in the chat for us? That'd be amazing. Thank you.
I'll work on that.
Thank you. And Ivanka would love to, I see your hand is raised. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Bikela. I have a lot of comments to make, but first off, I just wanted to ask that as a steering committee in the agenda, that we accept public comment, not just CSC comments right now, because there are folks that might be on here from the public that may not be on for anything else on the agenda except for the truck study. I know we usually leave it to the end, but that's only 5 minutes.
Thank you for elevating this, Ivanka. This is Bikela. Yes, and if folks feel comfortable with that, yes, please. Yeah, I don't see an issue with that, and I really hear what I'm hearing you say is, I'm hearing a desire from you for everyone to be able to participate in this portion of this conversation. So, so we hear that, and thank you for elevating that.
I want to second that for Ivanka. I think that this conversation is important to keep public comment at the end. So if we can take public comment as we move along, that will be helpful and greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Kimberly. And I see, Sandra, I do see your hand is raised. And I think that we had a comment in the chat just before that. So we would love to get to your raised hand in just a moment. And this is Bikela. And I see that Natalie, you posted questions in the chat of, will there be more content discussed related to the truck reroute study? Is the presentation over?
Thank you, Natalie, for the question. Is the presentation over for today? That is what I have to present today, yes. And then the first part is the first question related to today's presentation? Will there be more?
Well, because this is the truck reroute study, the final draft, I don't think we really got a breakdown of like the final recommendations, the final truck routes. So I thought that the presentation was going to be more in depth. And I feel like a lot of the things that were discussed were kind of like abstract, and we don't really, or at least I've been reading the final draft, but for other folks on here, like, is there going to be information presented to them on like what the final recommendations were, what the recommended enforcement actions were? Because none of that information was shared right now.
Okay, thank you. I better understand your question. So in June, we presented on the findings and the recommendations to the CSC. If there are new members on the CSC that wish to maybe go back and review some of the documents that we have presented over the last couple of years, please, I welcome you to go over to our website. The documents are in there. And as far as another presentation, there's also going to be that workshop tomorrow for City Council that'll provide some details. And then ultimately, I think the more detailed information that you're kind of looking for, that would be presented to City Council. We're shooting for the 26th of this month.
All right, thank you, Andrina. I think one of my concerns is, I think I saw the meeting today as a space to discuss and collaborate on, not just wait for Fresno City Council, but really provide recommendations and feedback from the whole CSC. So I just want to open space for that too. But I do think it's important, at least for folks that didn't attend or weren't able to attend the June CSC meeting, to kind of get like that overview again, because this is the final draft. I know that there were, as you said, slight changes, but I think it's fair to give everyone like a rundown of, the whole study again.
Thank you, Natalie, for your comment.
Thank you, Natalie. Yes, this is Bikela. And yes, and so it sounds like one thing that could be helpful is, Andrina, for clarity's sake, could you help us confirm that you have no new findings from June's presentation, that the findings have remained consistent from that time? I'm wondering if that could be some helpful clarification for the folks on this call, and how really the changes, and to confirm that the changes have primarily been with formatting, terminology, moving the map, and how the maps are portrayed. Could you clarify / confirm for us in this space, please?
Yeah. So yes, to confirm, the findings and recommendations, those haven't changed from what everyone saw back in May. The changes that did happen were more formatting, breaking up that map for ease of reviewing, providing that table so that if it was even then difficult with the broken up map, we had a table that listed all the changes there, the proposed changes to the designated truck route map, and the executive summary summarized the entire study into a couple of sheets to provide that at a glance. Those were the recommendations that were being made by the study itself, and adding additional references. References that were already in the fourth component, I'm sorry, that were already in the fourth component of the implementation report. We just added more within the existing conditions. But findings are the same. The recommendations remain the same.
Okay. This is Bikela. Thank you, Andrena. So with that, Andrena, would you be willing to clarify? So it sounds like the study revealed findings in May, was listened to here in the CSC in June, and you're now showing an updated presentation, but no content change. And so with that, would you be willing to clarify / confirm really what your goal, intent, and hope is for folks in this CSC public member space tonight, this evening?
So this evening, I wanted to confirm that the content hasn't changed. What we are looking for from the CSC is support in what we are moving forward with as proposed routes, as proposed network, and to put people at ease that the content didn't change. We just compiled the document, it's formatting, and we are ready to present to City Council.
Thank you for that number of comments in the chat and hands raised. So, and this is Bikela. And so, yes, definitely we want to make sure that we get to these. So I just want to elevate a chat earlier on from Lilia commenting how it would be nice if you could share the Zoom for tomorrow so we can share with the community, and also for those who can't and have no means of transportation. So I'm wondering if there is, if a member from the city of Fresno would be willing to share that Zoom information.
So I did share the link to the agenda for tomorrow's City Council, and within the agenda is the viewing options for the meeting itself.
Thank you, Andrena. This is Bikela. And
Excuse
then,
me, real quick, the one thing they tell you is that there is a Zoom connection, but they're not taking Zoom comments unless one of the city council members cannot attend and they Zoom in. That's the only way the community will have any sort of engagement. Thank you.
thank you for elevating that, Lisa. This is Bikela. Andrena, did you have a thought to that before we move on to the quickly piling up list of raised hands here?
The public can join in person. It's held here at City Hall on the second floor in Chambers. So I invite people who can attend to attend or view it through the other options.
Okay. And Andrena, just to confirm, to ensure clarity for everyone in this space. So for folks, in light of that, for folks who will be joining on Zoom, will there be an opportunity or space for comments for folks joining on Zoom and versus the in-person option, or will folks who join in person have that added ability to make comments that folks on Zoom wouldn't necessarily have, just so that folks are able to make as an informed decision as possible for tomorrow?
So typically, workshops are typically not open for comment. But if the council president opens it up, that will be her decision. but workshops are typically not opened up for commenting, whether it's through Zoom or in person. There is there's a portion within the agenda for unscheduled communications, unscheduled comments, I believe, for public comment. That anybody can provide comment at that point.
But not on Zoom.
Correct.
Okay, thank you for, this is Michaela. Okay, thank you for confirming that, just so that folks in the CSC space are just able to make the most informed decision in light of this important information for folks to level set expectations for what tomorrow's workshop space is intended to be. So with that, I think I saw Sandra's hand and Ivanka's hand, and then I think I saw a couple more comments come through the chat, as well as Lisa's hand as well. So Sandra, would you like to go next?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I really appreciate the walking us through the process. And while I appreciate cleaning up the report and making it a little bit easier to read and the graphics more clear, ultimately where I'm disappointed is I think that the truck reroute, the recommendations do not go far enough to meet the intent of AB 617, which is to reduce pollution in communities that rank at the highest levels across the state and certainly in the city and in the county. And I'm disappointed that the recommendations have remained the same throughout the different iterations of the plan. I think that the bypass restriction zones really do not protect, still do not protect sensitive receptors or communities, right? While, an example that's glaring for me is while there is, the bypass restrictions in some of the streets in Kawa, it appears, if I'm reading the map correctly, that there's still will be allowed trucks to pass through Cedar Avenue, which really cuts through the middle of the neighborhood and goes right next to an elementary school. Is also the street where there has been fatal truck and bicycle and pedestrian accidents. So that to me is just a glaring example of how the city's still missing the mark. And also I see that California Avenue is being proposed as a new route. And that again, California Avenue cuts through Southeast, Central, and West Fresno and communities that are already over exposed to truck traffic. So I'm really disappointed in just how short-sighted the recommendations appear to be, and would really like to see the city require really reroute trucks in ways that actually quantifiably reduce truck traffic and improve air quality. I think there's also for me some really glaring omissions and lack of enforcement, right? That there's enforcement will only occur under very specific situations and in terms of if there's funding available, which, based on the city's history, there never really is enough funding available. And I think that there is already ways that maybe the city could leverage existing funding and resources to actually create funding to actually and create enforcement. So I think there's a lack of imagination there demonstrated in terms of the recommendations. There's also, for me, a huge lack of follow-up on implementation around how community will be involved and actively engaged, not just a report out, similar to what we're getting today. I really would appreciate actual partnership with community. And I think it just follows in the city's pattern, right, of kind of checking the box, which is part of why the city stays getting sued on issues of environmental justice and failure to meet CEQA and other environmental laws. So I really would love to see some reconsideration of the recommendations to really strengthen them and reflect the feedback that, you know, this committee and the general public has provided over time. And with that, I would definitely, as a member, would not be supportive of the plan as presented, and I would hope that this body also would not be supportive. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. This is Andrena, the city. It looks like my director, Scott Mosier, might have some comments, so I'm gonna pass it on to him.
Thank you, Andrina. And those were really good concerns expressed. I did want to first emphasize, just given, just the level of feedback, lots of interest and comment. That's really the reason for conducting a council workshop initially, which again, just to emphasize, is there can be no action taken at that workshop. And there would be then the follow-up item to actually consider the only action item, which would be the truck route change, the ordinance, which really, if you look at the slides, those are all available online. The presentation slides, there's as the CSC saw the map before, pretty dramatic reduction, a very long list of routes that comes off, and only a handful added, largely the majority of those to address circulation changes from high-speed rail and Caltrans related to some interchange closures. But back to enforcement, I can say we would love to be able to have our police department doing more enforcement in that area. I know just from working with the chief and the officers, it's often very challenging in terms of resources and lack of resources, even for something like speed enforcement. If we have a corridor where, it's posted 35 miles an hour and traffic, reports our people are racing through 55, 60 miles an hour, sideshows, racing, traffic not yielding to pedestrians in the crosswalks, which is really important for active transportation, safe streets. All of those things are a challenge. And, really truck route enforcement, which identifies, yes, this truck doesn't belong here. It doesn't have an origin or a destination with a business, with a customer, and they're just cutting through. That's what we're trying to eliminate. But yes, you hit the nail on the head. Enforcement will be a challenge, and unfortunately, in all agencies, resources are limited. But we really hope that can be enforced. But we know, yes, it will be challenging.
Hi, this is Bikala again. Thank you so much for naming just, I'm hearing a lot of emotions that came up for you, Sandra, and want to hear that. I'm hearing that a lot of disappointment and just around expectations that haven't quite aligned, and a desire to see very specific things around sort of some of those impacts and understanding that more. And Scott, I thank you so much for being willing to share some context for us in this CSC space, and for naming some of the realities of the limitations of resources as well. And so thank you for taking the time to respond. I also see, Ryan, that your hand was raised during this portion. Did you have a specific response to Sandra's comment and sharing?
Yeah, the response made me some questions too, and just wanted to make sure that, I'm seeing the right thing, she's seeing the right thing. In regards to, some of the proposals about the new truck reroute I'm seeing a lot of there was mention about the route still being on California, but based on the new maps, it seems like the majority of California has been removed. And so I want to make sure that Sandra is looking at the correct map. In regards to Kawa, you're correct, Cedar is still on there, but there were several routes within the Kawa area that were also removed. And my understanding that was done specifically in response to the recommendations that were made through the health study. And I appreciate the city kind of going back and kind of reevaluating and looking to remove more of those routes.
Excuse me, Ryan, real
Yeah.
quick. For the purposes of this discussion that Sandra's brought up issues regarding Kawa, can you guys bring up the map so everybody can see, so we're all on the same page? Is that at all possible?
Sure.
That's just, I don't mean to intrude, but I think it would move the discussion.
Okay. So this is the tool that the city has on their website. And so right now I have the existing truck routes. Let me take off the proposed.
Ryan, sorry to interrupt. That actually isn't the most updated map. The most updated map is in the final draft, because I did talk to Christina from Arcadis, and they were working on trying to update this, but this one isn't updated.
Okay.
So there shouldn't be any major changes between what you're seeing here and what's in the final truck reroute study. So to the point that Ryan's trying to make, I think it serves its purpose, but I can also bring up an exhibit that's in the that's supposed to be
have the layers
presented.
on it too, Andrina?
To be able to turn on and off, no.
Okay.
But I'd be able to zoom into it as you speak about it. Give me a sec here.
Okay, let me stop my share then. So I mean, some other things too. So we like what Andrina is saying. These maps were shared out in May, and the initial commenting period was extended based on feedback that we got from community members. I think it was initially like 30 days, and then it was extended another 30 days to provide more opportunity for people to make specific comments in regards to the proposed routes. After the presentation that was given to the CSC members. In addition to those meetings, there was also public meetings that were going on that the city was holding both in person and virtually. We shared out information with all the community steering committee members in regards to those meetings to hopefully share that out with other people that had shown interest or that wanted to participate and provide feedback to the city on the process. And so I think those were just some of the additional opportunities. And
So one of the portions of truck route that is being proposed to be removed along Cedar is between Church and the Jensen bypass. Yes, not all truck routes are proposed to be removed, but a large portion are. We are proposing removal of
I think 35 segments, right?
43 miles.
43.
43 miles of truck routes. That is roughly a third of the truck routes in South Central Fresno. In South Central Fresno, there is about 127 miles worth of truck routes right now. But with our proposal of removal of 43 miles, we think that's going to benefit the community.
Andrina, this is Bikala. Just for the sake of everyone being on the same page tonight, I'm wondering, would you be willing just to very, very briefly kind of orient us to what it is that we're looking here, just in case folks have varying levels of familiarity with this map?
Yeah, so this is one of the attachments that's included in the council agenda item that was scheduled to go to City Council on the 29th. This here is what is being proposed based on the findings of the health impact assessment and the truck reroute study. This would be the network of truck routes for the city of Fresno. If you see these portions here where you don't see the truck routes, these are the areas where most of those truck routes were removed. There are additional ones over on this side and a lot within the downtown area. So I wish I had an exhibit to be able to show kind of like layers, like Ryan was sharing here. But this is one of the attachments that is in the staff report.
Since it's still really close, maybe just kind of going back to the other one so it's a little easier to see.
Yeah, I can do that.
Here, while you're working on that, full of our time and note that there's a lot of engagement around this topic. And so would love to maybe maximize our time. And if you don't mind, Ivanka, would you mind sharing your question?
Yeah, I will try to be on video, but my tech is kind of screwy tonight. So let me know if I'm not clear and I'll turn the screen off again. I think I will start with process and a reminder that this truck reroute study is an emission reduction measure. It is not your typical truck reroute study that is put on by a city. Normally, community aren't even involved in a truck reroute update. We've had this same truck study since 2000, truck routes since 2005, even though the request to get trucks out of communities of color has been going on for decades since the Darling rendering plan. With that said, I think it has been completely disregarded that this was a collaboration at the very most crucial point of this 2-year process, which is now in the final end. We have just spent the last 30 minutes of this steering committee of residents being spoken to and not heard. From the time that your final draft was put out, yes, we had an extension, but we weren't just asking for an extension for review, which is all we're doing right now, is reviewing what the city decided was the final best options of recommendations. We had a comment period. I do not see how any of the most important recommendations that we as community members made in that comment period have been changed, or as has been admitted, was only formatted changes in the very end. Some of those that were the most important was the UC Merced's 1,000-foot barrier around sensitive receptors. From the first draft to the end draft, that was actually taken out, which didn't even come from community. That came from the science-backed studies of UC Merced. The whole point that we had asked for a health impact assessment to be included was because we knew that on face value, community would be ignored. The hope was that if you included a health impact assessment, you cannot deny the scientific background. You cannot deny the science. But again, it's still being denied because that's actually being taken out. So I wanted to be on record. I do not agree. I do not think that this steering committee as community members should support where we are right now. And when we say there was a need for an extension of time, that there's still a need for more time, it's not to be spoken to. Let's think about the other emission reduction programs that we have had during AB 617. Big one, the air monitors. Do you all remember? Because I remember how many subcommittee meetings, how many Post-it notes we had to go through to decide as people that were industry, people that are EJ, along with community members around tables, figuring this stuff out. We did not do that for truck study, and it was the most important study, the most important measure that we were supposed to actually do that. When I had said on here and said, we need the community advisory group to meet with the technical advisory group. Don't keep it apart because you're afraid of conflict, or you're afraid of intense situations. You know what happened in that meeting? We came together and every public agency sat completely quiet. Let the community members, let them speak. Don't really listen to them, just let them have their moment. And that's referring to the check mark box theory. Okay, there are multiple things that all this is right now is a pretty package that skates around the details that are needed in a truck reroute study that is for the betterment of the community of South Central. For one, it was the 1,000-foot buffers. If Jennifer Clark was on tonight, she would say, oh, but there's means to making sure that there's particularities that go forward with making sure that if there is a need for a conditional permit, there would have to be another level. Well, that speaks to the fact that what was also missed in this truck reroute study that we have brought up is that there's a South Central specific plan that is pending right now. That deals with the zoning land use issues of our 617 boundaried area. How do you expect that this sounds good when you take away 1,000-foot buffer that's supposed to be around sensitive receptors, but then you did nothing for the zoning improvements around the same sensitive receptors? So if I look at Orange Center, Kawa Elementary as two main examples, there's no buffer, and you're referring to a restriction, whether you call it a regulated or whether you call it whatever you want to call it, what it is tonight. There is no change in the description of how that's going to protect the schools. Why? Because the land use zoning was not taken into consideration around the property that is nearest to those schools. So this is the same planning department of the same city that's working on both of these, and that is completely ignored. I do not support this truck study as it is. We have spent a lot of time on this, and we're at the very end. And the most important part, we're being slapped in the face as a community. You're spending time tonight talking about stuff that did not include the recommendations made by community. The 1,000-foot buffer was taken away. Land use is not in consideration. So let me break it down a little bit more for folks that are on here that may not understand the bypass truck restriction. Today, if you're by Orange Center Elementary, there is land on the north and the south side on Cherry Avenue. This study, as of today, could possibly say a truck can't go through there because there's no actual location of a business that needs the truck. The endpoint, there's a different route to go to get to your endpoint. Don't bypass, don't go through here. What good is that going to be when the property that's currently a house has been zoned to an industrial use, gets sold and redeveloped? Guess what? Now the trucks can go down that same restricted area that you just said wouldn't happen, because the new business that is coming in is now a business that needs its trucks, right? So this is it's like it's a farce. It's a document that is pretty, but when it comes to the details of what are those actionable changes that are going to reduce emissions in the South Central community, there's not much there. The other example is, not the example, the other concern and problem that didn't go deep enough is that we have these strategies in this document. All the strategies for supposedly improving trucks living side by side community members. There is not such a thing. Let's just get that clear. I work with residents. There are residents on this call that have to see heavy duty trucks less than 20 feet in front of their front door. Scott, you know where I'm talking about? Miss Katie at Orange Avenue and Central. You promised that that frontage road would not be used for trucks. Guess what? While the city is undergoing that intersection, where do you think those trucks are using? Right in front of that whole community's home on that frontage road that isn't even part of Central Avenue. This truck reroute study is not even going to really improve an area as specific as example to Miss Katie's home or people that live in an area like Miss Katie's. The other problem with this is that the strategies that are considered basically are infrastructure strategies that we are calling traffic calming strategies. It still doesn't help to have a bike lane or a crosswalk where heavy duty trucks are still crossing in the same area that's going to suck you into the side of a big rig. That's not, it's laying a Band-Aid over a problem that is being refused to be fixed. Those infrastructure strategies is not the same as rerouting strategies. You're not rerouting anything. And I think part of that came out of the fact that when we were doing engagement, the questions weren't specific enough to community members. If it is, what do you not like about the routes in front of your area? Who isn't going to say they're tired of a bent rim and a slow leaking tire from hitting too many potholes? Everybody's going to say that's a problem, right? But if you're not asking the specific questions to gain the correct information, you're never going to get to the fact that there is vibration, there is sound 24/7, there is dust, there is brake dust. The list goes on to what's impacting the health of South Fresno residents. That is different than just stating we need improved infrastructure, because you know who the infrastructure is really for in the end? It's not for community. It's going to be for the improvement of getting more trucks through these neighborhoods. So when we're not ready to move this forward and adopt because it's not finished. We have not done the hard work of coming together at a table and breaking this information down, because overall your presentation makes it sound like it's wonderful, but these details are left out. When you talk about enforcement, Scott, we have the CHP office right there between North Point and North Avenue. You're going to tell me we can't use a state enforcement agency when this is part of CARB and this is a state funded type of, oh, that's because you're forgetting that this was a collaboration with state funded dollars. This is not just a city study. This is not just a city truck route. There have been some changes in what you are rerouting, but as long as it's listed as a restriction for a bypass and that land use has not updated, we're still going to see trucks going by sensitive community areas. And then back to these infrastructure strategies. None of them have money behind them. The whole graphs and that breakdown are possibilities of where funding can come from. There's no commitment by this city to put money towards any of these strategies without competitive application for that funding. And multiple times when we apply as a city for that type of funding, it's not for the betterment of a community, it's for the betterment of industry. The last thing I will end on, besides saying I second Sandra's opinion that this is not ready to move forward, I do not believe that this steering committee should support this truck reroute study as it is currently written. We still need more time to do more work, not to be spoken to, but to actually do more work. And the last thing I will end with is that somewhere in the study, it states we'll come back to this and review it in a year's time. No, this is an emission reduction plan. Like all of our other measures that we've done, community has been involved through and through. In a year's time, we don't need one report to go to city council. How's it going? No, it needs to be continually followed and implemented involving community on an actual committee. because you're not going to be hearing from community members of whether this is really working or not. So I will end with that there is a need for an oversight committee that follows this process through its implementation phase. We've worked with you guys for so long. Like this group, we should not be afraid of having hard conversations that are actually honest conversations. And right now, this presentation was not honest, and it is not intentionally supportive or honoring the time and energy that community members are putting into this public agency space for the betterment of the communities that they live in. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Michaela, Ivanka, thank you so much for your honesty and vulnerability and willingness to lean in to share some of the very real thoughts and opinions and insights into this process with this space. And thank you for reminding us of how community input and feedback, especially with how the CSC was engaged with this study, and highlighting how today's summary of the presentation is not reflective of the requests of the CSC. And so with that, Andreina, we would love to know, can you help us understand what the next steps will be for your office or for the city of Fresno in light of this feedback from CSC members? And with that, will you move forward with the workshop tomorrow and the city council proposal with or without the CSC support? That could be helpful information for us in this CSC space tonight.
Thank you, Andreina here with the City of Fresno. We will be moving forward tomorrow with our workshop and hear from City Council on next steps on presenting to City Council on the reroute study and the health impact study, and presenting for introduction the ordinance at a later date. So tomorrow's workshop currently is planned to happen. And thank you, Ivanka, for your comments and concerns and your involvement with the entire process from start.
Thank you for sharing this information with us, Andreina. So recognize that there are a lot of folks that still have thoughts and comments that haven't been elevated yet. So I want to make sure that we get to those. So want to elevate, I want to say Lisa and Natalie, I know you've both had your hands up for a while, and I know we have some comments here as well. So wondering if you both, Lisa, please feel free to go ahead, and Natalie after Lisa, and then we'll return to some of the comments, questions in the chat.
Well, I'm going to try to be as clear and concise as possible, because I know there are a lot of people that with a lot of questions. First, Scott, you need to be really embarrassed about this plan. You know, I was there at the beginning when we sat down and we talked about the money given to the city, how much and what it was going to basically contribute into this truck reroute study. And if the committee's not happy, then you're not living to the commitment that you came to this committee with. Second, you know, I would have gotten this document had the planner, what's her face, had not hung up on me during the conversation we had, but that's beside the point. The third thing I want to bring up is I have grave concerns because I literally have not seen this. So I barely got to see a snippet of the map around Roding Park. Roding Park is, you know, my jam. And what I'm concerned about is there even a discussion about the school that is using the CE process that is going to be built across the street from Chaffee Zoo, Roding Park, right there on Belmont, where there's going to be about 408 kids attending daily. With all that traffic, is there a discussion about the community that is the low income community and the quote unquote affordable low income housing that is being forced along Parkway? You know, this is the first time I've heard about 1,000-foot buffer, which I would love to see on Parkway, because those folks are going to be the poorest of the poor right there with one of the biggest polluters of PM 2.10. Then you're going to have the trucks off of Belmont. Then you're going to have the trucks coming off on Olive. You know, you have that corridor right there from Parkway through Palm, right by Producers with all those trucks. You're now going to put kids in there, and they're talking now about putting a parking structure in there. And I'm pretty sure that your truck reroute study doesn't discuss all that. Why? Because it's convenient for you, Scott. It's convenient because you guys are misusing the CEQA process on all these projects that are going along. Let's call it what it is. This is a pro-development document. And what it is doing in the community across the street from Belmont and the community along Parkway is that it's creating environmental racist communities where you're going to have such high concentration of pollution. And we're not even going to talk about, you know, the exotic animals and the impact on them in Chaffee. So, you know, this is not a complete document unless you adequately address all the health concerns and also addressed the emerging cancer clusters that are happening in those communities. Because you have a cancer cluster over on the other side of Belmont by Producers. And is that discussed in this document? I don't know. The activists in that community don't know. Why don't they know, Scott?
Hi, this is Bikela.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for Lisa. Thank you so much for your willingness to to share honestly with us what's coming up for you. And I think this would be a really great time in our meeting to acknowledge that we continue to name that as often as a part of the scientific study process, we're often left with more questions than answers. And we also want to name that reality is that for many of us, the expectations have not aligned with the outcomes raised in the study. This is just real. And so we want to name that. We want to name very real emotions that I'm hearing and sensing and perceiving in this space of disappointment, of hurt, of not feeling heard and understood. I think that's coming through really clearly. And with that, I also want to remind us of the community agreements named at the beginning of this call, and that we would just love to continue to remind folks to continue prioritize attacking the problem over the person, and with that naming very real issues, whether it be land use or health outcomes and impact on communities versus attacking individuals. Thank you. With that, would love to turn to your hand, Natalie, before we get to folks' comments in the chat. And thank you everyone for your patience. We know we thank you everyone for your patience. Oh, but before I do that, did any folks from the AD or the city of Fresno have any responses to Lisa's comments before we proceed?
Sure. Thank you, Bakira. I wanted to just express thanks to everyone serving on the truck reroute subcommittee and the CSC as a whole. You know, this study actually, we found went through a pretty robust process. I know that there will always be more comments, and it not going far enough. There are a number of things discussed tonight that were not within the scope of what was initially approved in terms of the agreements and the funding mix. But there's always more out there. But I want to thank everyone with this process. We actually did a chapter by chapter individual review, step by step, right, going through it. Pretty large number of community surveys. Glad to have had lots of meetings related to it, and lots of comments and lots of feedback. I also was just reflecting on our process, and I was thinking back to pre-pandemic meeting with the CSC in the early days, and one individual I very clearly remember comment from Mr. Sylvester Hall saying, "How quickly can you remove Jensen from the truck route map?" So that was pre-pandemic. The action, which again, tomorrow is not an action item, but whenever that goes forward, maybe that's the 26th, if that's the will of the council and they want to see that come forward for removing truck routes, that action is included in that. Southwest Fresno, if you compare the two, you see basically the proposed action and staff recommendation wipes out almost all the east-west routes entirely. Effectively, we're saying to the industry, do not cut through this area at all. What does that mean? We're saying if you're coming from west of Southwest Fresno, go up to Freeway 180. Go up to the 180 and use the state highways to get where you're going. Don't take Jensen. Don't take these other routes. Don't take Church. So anyway, but tomorrow's not an action item, and we really appreciate the dialogue. I know there are a lot of things in there that are really beyond truck routes. We weren't scoped for general plan amendments, land use changes. Those types of discussions still are in the health assessment, and the health assessment is there. That no doubt, I would think, will continue to spark further discussion and conversations with the community and the city.
This is Bikela. Thank you, Scott. With that, Natalie, I see your hand raised, and then we'll return to comments in the chat. Take it away, Natalie.
Yeah, I just wanted to say for the record, I also I agree with Ivanka and Sandra, and that I don't agree with the approval of the truck reroute study in the current version that it is. I definitely feel that so much needs to be fine-tuned, and a lot of it needs to be vetted through the CSC, because this is the source of the study in the first place. And yes, the city is a part of it, but this is a huge project that came from the CSC and is being supported by CARB and also the Valley Air District, and that needs to be honored. And I think at the end of the day, we really want to see items that are going to be enforceable and actionable, and not just a study that's just going to be sitting and not really doing anything for the community. And I also did want to share that I do think at tomorrow's city council meeting, I think everything that was relayed at this meeting, all the concerns that were brought up, need to be relayed to council members, because we are the guiding voices of this SERP, and city council needs to understand that we're not okay with some of the things that have been proposed here. And I think specifically, I did want to address the fact that it looks like so many routes have been taken out of South Fresno, but in reality, they've been just replaced with these truck bypass restriction zones, which they look like they're going to protect community, but at the end of the day, if there's a warehouse within that zone, that truck is still allowed to enter and exit that community. So how are we going to know? Firstly, how are we going to know what trucks are actually permitted there? How are we going to know what trucks aren't permitted there? How is community going to know that? And how's that going to be enforced? How is Fresno PD or code enforcement going to cite a violation for those unpermitted trucks? And I think another thing too is with the land uses, like, I think we're asking for that to be considered, because at the end of the day, where are these trucks coming from? They're coming from warehouses, they're coming from industrial development. You can't, these trucks don't exist in a bubble. They're coming from these facilities that are contaminating the community, and that needs to be analyzed, because if these routes are 1,000 feet away from have to be 1,000 feet away from the community. These land uses also have to be 1,000 feet away from these sensitive receptors. They go hand in hand. They're not something that comes separately. And then on top of that too, I just wanted to echo the fact that in the final report, like there was no mention of future community involvement. And so I just wanted to stress the importance of an oversight implementation committee to continue, you know, providing feedback on what implementation is going to look like on the ground, providing feedback on what are where are the hotspots for all these violations and where these unpermitted trucks are passing through, and also really understanding, are the new routes being used or not? We need that to still be a continuing part of this conversation, because it doesn't end here. When the Fresno City Council decides to adopt it, the CSC and the public need to continue being engaged in this process. And I just wanted to just emphasize that I feel like all the concerns that were spoken here need to be relayed to City Council tomorrow. And I will be at the City Council hearing tomorrow, at the workshop tomorrow, to raise some of these concerns, but I do think that it's important for the Air District to also raise these concerns to those CSC.
Thank you, Natalie. This is Bikela. I would like at this point in time to elevate a couple of comments in the chat, but before I do that, I would just love to indicate, just for thank you so much, Liz, for furiously taking notes during this portion of the meeting. It sounds like there is an action item or a couple of action items that are emerging for the city, being that leaving this meeting, even if comments won't specifically be taken at tomorrow's meeting, there can still be an action to convey these concerns to that space, or to the city and City Council, as well as there might be, it also sounds as though there's an action item to convey and communicate to the CSC in the future about the plan to continue engaging the CSC in the coming months and meetings. So just noting a couple of those action items. With that too, before reading comments, we did want to remind folks that there is a camp presentation, and that we would like to get to this, and we would like to get this information to each of you during this really critical time of wildfires impacting air quality, as many of us in Fresno have been experiencing. And so after reading the comments, the CSC can decide to either continue this conversation or move to the camp, but we did want to elevate that, just specifically considering the time sensitive piece of the wildfire season. So yes, so just a couple of comments. Oh yes, so Natalie, seeing your comment about here's the link to share the final report that shares updated routes with the truck bypass restriction zones. I think it would be helpful to show this one, because even though many routes have been eliminated, trucks are still allowed to pass through these zones. Going on earlier, Jasmine, I know you mentioned, can you briefly highlight some of the main findings and recommendations? I'm wondering if maybe a member from the city or the AD, but yeah, maybe a member from the city would be willing to copy and paste the links in the chat, just to refresh folks so that can be more accessible in light of that comment. Kimberly, we saw your comment earlier in this meeting about, so our comments and suggestions were not considered at all. And Dr. Curry, we see your chat and comment. Have truck representatives been invited to the City Council workshop, where City Council members have the option to call on them to speak and may not offer the same opportunity for community members to speak? So I just read a few questions from Dr. Curry, from Jasmine, from Kimberly, and would love to pause if there are any responses that Jill, Scott, and Drina.
One of my other questions.
Okay.
There was stated earlier that there was going to be an in-depth presentation at the workshop tomorrow to City Council. So their presentation is going to be different from the one that we received tonight? Or is it going to be in lines with the one that we received tonight? Because whatever is being presented to council should have been presented to us tonight as well.
Andrina here with the city. Kimberly, thank you for your question. The presentation for tomorrow is a workshop. It's an informative workshop for council. We will be going over some background on how the project started, and an overview of the process from beginning to end. That would be a workshop for tomorrow.
Cool. So would they receive any of the recommendations that the CSC has provided during this time period, during the time that the truck reroute study has started, from the subcommittee meetings that we did have? Would they receive any of those recommendations or suggestions or comments that were made from the CSC? Or is it just going to be summarized in your words or the city's words?
So comments and concerns and questions that were collected through the entire process of the project have been incorporated into the study itself and all the subsections within the study, and are reflected on there. So concerns that were raised, for example, not wanting a specific truck route to continue, a proposal to remove.
Not to cut you off, Adrena, I know what's in the study, but are those going to be elevated orally to the council? Like, are they going to be spoken to so they can understand where the CSC is at? Because I doubt if anyone from the Air District will be attending the city council meeting tomorrow. So it's very imperative that they know where we stand within the truck route, because I doubt it if they read the whole truck reroute study that was presented to us tonight. So being able to express how we feel, because again, they're not taking public comment on Zoom. A lot of us on the CSC, especially our residents, they work, so they won't be able to attend. So us EJ advocates are going to be there, but it's very important that the residents' voices are heard. So being able to speak to them and tell them some of the concerns and suggestions that we had as a CSC would be helpful.
Hey, Kimberly, Scott Mosier here. Was just going to add the workshop. Again, the slides, the information. It's been online since last Friday, and really, as Andrina shared, is just a lot of background. I think you know, when the item was originally in August and then was removed from the agenda as an action item. As our city manager shared, you know, it should be noted that we have city council members who've come, you know, into their office long after the Southwest Pacific Plan occurred back in 2017. They're not necessarily familiar with even the AB 617 legislation. They were not on the council when the funding agreements were approved. And now a flurry of comments is coming into them. So primarily the goal is really to bring everyone just up to speed on that process. That, you know, that there was a truck reroute subcommittee, the CSC, what levels of involvement, what outreach has been out there to the business community. Just in general, and it is not an action item. So there would be, and we can't guarantee that timing. Would it be on September 26th, or will there be some consensus of the council that would be later, that perhaps doesn't occur until October? And then the action item would really be that time to kind of go to that next step to lay out specific comments, recommendation, and what this study and the action it does or is not recommended to do at this time. Does that make sense? Is that helpful?
It's helpful, but I think through this process, it's imperative to elevate the standing of the CSC and how they feel throughout the process. Again, since some of the city council members were not in office during this time that the Southwest Pacific Plan took place, the South Central Pacific Plan took place, because if you, and I know you're familiar with these plans, but in those plans, there are suggestions of reroutes for trucks in each of those plans. And I don't see that reflecting in this truck reroute study plan at all. So I just wanted to make sure that the CSC and how we're feeling right now tonight, that is being elevated during the workshop as well as when it's time for the hearing. But that's all I have at this time. Thank you.
Michaela again. Thank you, Kimberly. Folks from the city of Fresno, any other responses? I know, I don't know that Dr. Curry's question got answered in the chat. Yeah, unless I missed that. Would one of you be willing to speak to that? And I see Dr. Curry, you have your hand raised. Go ahead, Dr. Curry.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not going to repeat some of the concerns that have already been addressed, but I do want to clarify the idea of the truck bypass restrictive zones. So you've offered the recommendations to remove specific routes, and what you're left with is a list of routes that you are offering to the city to basically approve as the official routes for the city. And so these truck restrictive bypass, how does that fit in with the removal of the routes that you've identified? And is it just a way for trucks to be able to go back into the neighborhoods with some lightweight restrictions about when they can be there and how heavy their trucks can be? What's the difference between having removed a route and then offering up these bypass restrictive zones?
Thank you, Dr. Curry, for your question. So these zones were identified where we have sensitive receptors. So heavy residential, schools. These zones are around the sensitive receptors. After these areas were identified, then the consultant went the step further to see which truck routes were going through these zones. These are the primary areas where the truck routes are proposed to be removed.
So just so that I'm clear, the recommendation is to remove the route, and yet we are offering them this bypass so that they can basically still use the route. Is that correct?
No. So these zones do not allow for bypass truck traffic. It restricts it. So it identifies these sensitive receptor areas in town and then removes any truck routes that are currently going through those neighborhoods.
Hey, Andrea, maybe just I could show it in probably like 15 or 20 seconds.
So what is the bypass restricted zone? Where is that? You're saying that's around sensitive areas, but I hear you saying that those routes have been removed.
So Ryan's sharing the interactive map that was shared back in May.
Yeah.
Do you see the pink?
So the existing truck routes go through these pink zones right now.
Right.
And so what they're talking about with the truck bypass zones is removing those routes from within those pink areas, which, you know, is the majority of the mileage that they're talking about. So it's like, I forget, 40, however many miles, you know, predominantly, you know, or I shouldn't say predominantly, but a lot of it within these, you know, heavily residential areas.
So identify, if you would, where's
Sorry.
guess I'm not clear on if you're removing the route, why is there now a bypass zone? Isn't that just another way for trucks to re-enter without recognizing the health impacts that were identified?
So the purpose of the truck bypass restriction zones is to not permit trucks from using these neighborhoods as bypass options.
Andrina, Scott here. Is it fair to say the addition of the zone, that's actually a stricter, more restrictive measure than just eliminating the truck route?
Yes.
And this is Jill Gormley with the City of Fresno. And I think it also highlights the areas for somebody who may have been more familiar with our old route map, with the routes going through the neighborhoods. It shows these areas now where we don't want these trucks just bypassing through or using it as their normal routes. Whereas today, that is a route for them to use. So this highlights that area as being restricted for them to use.
So I still see that there are just lots of ways for trucks to continue to go through neighborhoods, and that some of the routes have been removed that go through neighborhoods, yes, but it still seems as if you're offering them this opportunity to go through with adding a few restrictions. So I think that isn't the intent of the truck rerouting study, which by definition is to reroute things. So that seems inconsistent with what was planned and what community kept requesting. So the other question I had, which is really about tomorrow's workshop and whether or not representatives from the truck industry will be there, and whether or not they'll be able to provide input. And oftentimes the city council has the opportunity to ask them to come up and speak and share information that may not be offered to community members. And there seems to be a challenge in terms of sharing the information in a way that is appropriate and consistent with a real community engagement. So are truck representatives invited to attend in case they have questions? Will they be sharing information? Will they be asking questions? And, it says that the local authorities can designate the truck routes. So if the city council decides that they don't like any of these recommendations, what's the next step for the community who's invested in this process of getting these truck routes out of the neighborhood? What would be your next steps in terms of pushing back for the sake of the community and for the sake of the health impacts that have been identified already?
Dr. Curry, Scott Mosier here. I'll try to respond first, and then Jill or Andrina may have some additions. I first wanted to say, the workshop's been noticed. CSC is by far the most aware of that, and we're doing a thorough discussion that others you mentioned are not receiving to that degree. They have been in some of the business representatives have been in some of course, the outreach meetings and have participated. So as far as who is allowed to or asked to provide additional comment, I wish I could tell you that. That's not under the control of myself or the city manager. That is under the city council rules and procedures, and that is really at the purview of the council president and the council members, whether they wish to call someone up. It is not a hearing. That, again, this is really a precursor to any action item at all. This is just a non-action workshop So that, again, that's really the council president's purview as to how that occurs. So, and as far as potential actions, yes, you very keenly noted that if you have a staff recommendation, a thorough study, a health assessment, yes, a council member, well, again, not tomorrow, but in the future meeting, a council member could say, well, I move to adopt this, but I don't want to remove this route or that route. I want those to remain as truck routes, in which case a lot of you follow and are familiar with the procedures. And, if that motion got a second, then it would, be up for a vote. It would require majority simple majority to pass. If something were not approved or considered, again, we still, as a staff, as a department, and the city administration, that's the recommendation. The Mayor Dyer has reviewed this map. He's well aware of proposal to remove a pretty significant number of routes and supported that moving forward. So we would have to see what those next steps are. I would not expect everyone in the business community would agree with the staff recommendation in the map. So we'll see where the city council ultimately lands.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott and Jill and Andrina for responding to these things. This is Bikela. Yes. Ooh, and thank you everyone for your willingness to engage in this ongoing conversation in this time and space this evening. So with that, would love to take a moment to just name the continual comments that have come in through the chat. And again, shout out to our Linguistica team for being willing to continue translating these comments as well. We saw earlier, Jonas Paulos, that you commented our friend died on August 28th, 2024 at the age of 49 due to bad air quality and pollution. He lived in Southwest 93706. And Jonas, thank you so much for your willingness to share that really tender piece of your life and story with us in this space. And we don't take that lightly. And it's just a reminder for why so many of us do feel so passionately about this. And see various comments from folks expressing sorrow for this loss. Yes, with that, saw some comments from a comment from Sandra about layers being helpful. Saw some links. Thank you so much, Natalie, for dropping those links here in the chat. And see some agreement coming in. Ivanka from Mary Lou. I see your comment, Ivanka, about these zones will still allow trucks to get to businesses near the sensitive receptors. And if the land use isn't updated to less impactful zones that don't require truck dependent businesses, then trucks will still go through there. Saw your comment, Sandra, but they can still drive through the bypass zones if there is a business within or across the zone that they have to get to. And then I see your comment, Naimeen. The proposed plan does not explain a serious and strong enforcement plan. The main goal of the study was to change the route of trucks, and it seems that more attention was given to the safety issue because the questions were not properly drafted. And later on, I don't think this plan reduced a significant number of routes. This plan reduced a significant number of routes. The differences in the map does not support this claim. And so thank you all for your grace and patience as I read these aloud. We know for any folks joining via phone, it might be harder to access these questions and comments as well. So thank you for that. And so yes, any responses to any of the chats and questions I just read. I know we've been talking about a lot of these things over the past few minutes. Okay. Okay. I see your comment, Jonas. When we play politics, people will die. Hmm. Hmm. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing. We hope, everyone, that as future studies, policies, and anything that impacts the well-being of residents in this community are launched, that we'll learn from this community engagement process that was utilized. We learned that today, the CSC and residents are expressing their desires to be heard, to be understood. I heard spoken to versus heard. And wanting to see their recommendations reflected in the study recommendations. So we want to name this and elevate this. At this time, recognizing the time and recognizing as well that there was a lot of significant engagement around meaningful community engagement around this piece being the truck reroute study update that we did not get the chance to get to the air monitoring updates or standing updates. So we would love to communicate those via email communication.
Excuse me, real quickly, I just have one question. Did the committee take a vote on whether they support or don't support the report as written today, right now? Has there been a vote?
I think the closest thing we got to a vote, Lisa, was me seconding Sandra's opinion that this study is not ready to move forward for a city council vote.
And don't you think that there should be a vote so staff
Yes,
has to report it out?
Yeah, that is part of, like, we're forgetting in the very end stages of thinking this is just being handed over to the city, that in this process, we had a process as AB 61 steering committee members, because a truck study would not have taken place if it had not been for a measure called an emission reduction measure.
Because I believe if you guys don't take a vote, in the minds of the way the city works and the mechanisms, not to name people, but silence implies consent. So if they have to report out that the AB 617 committee took a vote and they rejected this, and these are the reasons why they rejected it, they're going to have to report it out tomorrow in their workshop.
Correct.
So I would suggest as a member of the public that you guys take a vote, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa.
I will make the motion to not support the truck reroute study as presented.
Correct, and I second that motion that it should not be accepted as presented. It still needs work. And I don't mean being talked to, but actual vetted work.
Is there any opposition to this? This is Amy Ramos. Anyone opposed to this? Per your charter, for the CSC, a consensus in the first introduction is sufficient, and so the committee here now has consensus to not support the current status of what is written in this report for what will be presented from the city. So the support of the CSC will be removed, is the recommendation from this community steering committee. Per the charter, we technically don't have a vote unless we have a vote requested on your agenda. So this is the same thing, it's consensus, there's no opposition. Thanks, everyone.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead, Miami.
So, this is as a public comment, because I'm, my alternate is really participating in the meeting, but I just have a question. So what's gonna happen? Because I think that not only what is gonna happen with the city, but to us, because I think, we kept on giving feedback in person, feedback virtually, and we did not see a draft at the final plan until and heard about it until tonight. And now we're saying, no, this is not enough. You got to go and change it. So what will be the process now? The city goes back and change it and then come back to us, or what's going to happen? Because I think I'm not clear what the next step will be. I just want to remind ourselves that this study is not, it's not only under the authority of the city, because the city did not pay for it. AB 617 money paid for it, and it had an ultimate goal of changing the routes of the trucks to take them away from sensitive receptors. That's the goal, and I don't think that was fulfilled in the way that the study was conducted. So we want to make sure that this is not only heard and then turn around and do nothing with it, and then move forward and try to present this to the city, not only for tomorrow in the workshop, but on the 26th for a vote. I think we want to make sure that the city responds and says, okay, we're going to take your feedback, make changes in this plan, and then come back to us as CSC, and then go take it from there before any action is taken officially with the city council members.
This is Amy. Thank you, Naomi. Thank you for sharing that, and that it has been the theme of what was discussed, and also the consensus of the steering committee and the public members who made comments today, that exactly what you've just shared. And as your facilitator for tonight's meeting, Michaela, I think did a very good job summarizing that what we're hearing from the city is that the findings themselves and the recommendations are the same from April, May, June, etc. till today, and that the changes were to the aesthetics of the presentation itself and the maps. And so the key findings are the same. I'm not hearing that the findings are going to change. So what I am hearing from the city, and I'd love clarification, is if there are going to be any more chances for you to all have authentic community input where there will be change based on the community. I'm not hearing that. So at this point, the CSC has provided their feedback and it's not been incorporated. And I don't know what else is possible. I would love to know from the city what else is a concrete actionable next step beyond, we're over time now, we're 9 minutes over, and I really haven't heard any clear next steps beyond like, there will be no changes based on the recommendation of the CSC. That is what the actions have shown tonight. I don't think there's anything else to add, but I would love to open up the space for folks to share from the city, if there's anything else that will change it at all.
So as of right now, tomorrow we will be doing the workshop to provide an overview
I'm
of
sorry,
the project.
I'm gonna interrupt you. We just need a concrete answer. We've heard that. And that is, with process wise, we hear the next steps. The question is, will there be a significant change to the recommendations that is reflective of community engagement? Or those key findings that you've summarized numerous times now to the CSC will remain consistent? It's a very clear black and white question at this point.
So after tomorrow's workshop with the city council, we will then take the recommendations as they currently stand
The
to
one
city
different
council
now,
at a later date.
on the 26th.
As of now, we're thinking the 26th. That might be pushed. We're not sure of that.
You mean your recommendations, the staff recommendations, or what we just said as CSC today?
The recommendations based on what we have heard from the community and the CSC throughout the process.
Okay, so that's just to be clear, because now at this
No.
we're talking in circles. And so for the record, the CSC has now provided you with consensus that what you've presented since April continues to be not reflective of what AB 617 CSC committee for the South Fresno community would like to see. So there's a motion on the table to essentially not use the words that this is authentic community feedback, because it doesn't represent what this committee, the steering committee, presented to you all. So I understand that as the city, so I'm a facilitator here and I'm just trying to provide clarification, because now we're just talking semantics and talking over each other and not really understanding. And so to be 100% clear, it seems to me as a facilitator that the three folks from the city that are here tonight on public record are unable to say whether or not there can be changes that can truly reflect what this community is recommending be part of the changes. Therefore, this community tonight has voted, has driven by a consensus process, recommended to the city of Fresno that this proposal does not reflect the needs of the community of South Fresno residents and the steering committee. So we've heard from multiple residents, multiple community steering committee members, and there's been a lot shared today. There was a lot of recommendations, and many of the themes that were shared by folks are the same themes that we've heard from all of the times that the city has been here to present in this space. We will track the progress of all the processes that the city has mentioned. We hope that other agencies that are listening to this process can learn from the lessons and the mistakes that the city of Fresno has made in incorporating authentic community feedback that truly reflects the needs and the health impacts that were shown in the actual data. We understand that this is reflective of a community-driven process that provided feedback, yet it's not included in these recommendations that were presented here tonight. And so I hope that other agencies are paying attention and learning from your mistakes tonight, so that we can actually focus on the purpose of AB 617, which is really to help clean the air for the residents of South Fresno. And so with that said, I'd love to invite the Air District to make any final comments. As your facilitator tonight, I want to help wrap up the meeting, be respectful of your time. It doesn't look like we're moving to any action items tonight, and we'll continue the conversation. We'll have updates that get sent to you via email, and the workshops will still continue. City council presentations will still continue. So we encourage folks to attend those meetings as you see fit. And I see Scott has come off mute. I don't know, Scott, if you want to go before Ryan, before we wrap up.
I'll defer to Ryan.
Thanks, Scott. No, I think there's been over 2 hours of conversation, mostly in regards to the truck reroute study. And I think there's been a lot of information, thoughts, concerns, feedback that has been shared. And you know, definitely stuff that needs to be thought about. And you know, appreciate everybody coming in and sharing. I really appreciate you know, Andrina, Jill, and Scott for being here tonight, and you know, taking that feedback from all of you firsthand. And yeah, thanks.
Thanks everyone for engaging and for your dedication for community change. I hope that you have a better evening, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Amy.
I'm going to close out the meeting. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Bye.